Okay, guys, so we are going to be reading some of the diary entries from Anne Frank, who was the teenager who was hidden for a couple years in an attic during the Holocaust. And she eventually did die in one of the concentration camps, but the diary entries that she has left behind um, have become a legacy and have become super important to even our current world. So, we're going to be reading some of the diary entries. In our textbook, they have multiple diary entries. Of course, they don't have her whole diary in there, but we're going to read three of them: one from January 1943, one from November 8th, 1943, and then one from a few days later, November 11th, 1943. So I'm going to kind of read them aloud with the screencast video here, hoping that that helps you to read and understand them. So I want you to follow along as I read the diary entry, and then you can pause to actually come back and do your questions here. So we're going to need to open the textbook here. So I'm going to show you on Launchpad how to do it. I would suggest you do this on your Launchpad as well, so you can have the book open for yourself when you're going back to the questions. So let me go back there. So it's instructional apps. You're looking for HRW. And when you open the HRW app, you'll see some icons in your dashboard, and you're looking for one that says student ebook. So let's wait and see if my internet will catch up with us here. Oh, hold on one second. Let me log back in. Okay, perfect. So your icon should look like this. It'll say student ebook. So you click on that, and we have to kind of navigate to where the diary entries are. I happen to already be on the diary entries, but if you are not, you go up here to contents. Okay, you kind of like back arrow yourself until you get to the first part of the table of contents, and we're in collection 5, Anne Frank's Legacy. And we're actually not reading the one called The Diary of Anne Frank. That's a play version of it, which I hope we can read some of later. We're looking for this one that says From the Diary of a Young Girl. So you'll click on that, click read the text, and it'll bring you right here. Okay, so it'll give you a page view. You can zoom in a little bit. And then we'll get started. Okay, if you kind of preview, you'll see like the dates of the diary entries here. So this is like the first one we're going to read, January 13th, 1943. You can see that right here in your questions. But if I go back, if you like tab through, you'll see different entries, right? So we're not reading all of them. We're just reading different selections. Okay, so you want to watch carefully which ones we're reading, but we are going to start off with the one at the beginning. I do want to draw your attention to the top of the page. It gives you a little background about Anne, and of course, that's her picture there. What does it say for us? Oh, let me refresh so that I can actually show it to you. It says at the top here, Anne Frank, who lived from 1921 to from 1929 to 1945, was 13 years old when she and her family went into hiding to avoid being sent to concentration camps by the Nazis. So imagine that, you guys. A lot of you in the room are 13. Imagine all of a sudden having to go into hiding so that your family is not captured by the Nazis. During the 2 years she spent living in an attic, she kept a diary, which she called Kitty. That's kind of strange to us, right? We might think, well, that's a little weird. But if you think about the fact that it was just Anne and her family in an attic for 2 years, you might want to create some kind of like extra person, right? Like name your diary Kitty so you feel like you have someone that you're talking to. So she calls her diary Kitty. It says, after the war, Anne's father, the only family member to survive the concentration camps the family was eventually sent to, chose to publish the diary. The selection you are about to read consists of entries taken from throughout the work. And we'll talk about this more later, but that must have been a big decision, right? Because Anne's father is the only one eventually who survives. The family gets sent to concentration camps. The father is the only one who makes it out alive, and he decides to publish his daughter's diary. And we know diaries are typically private, personal things, but he decides to let it be published. And so I want you to think about maybe what motivated that decision. Okay, so we're going to start with this first entry. Let me zoom in a little bit. January 13th, 1943. Oh, when I zoom in, it just kind of like loses the page for you. Let me see if I can try one more time. Waiting patiently. Let's see if it doesn't zoom in, then we'll just have to try and do our best, I guess. Looks like it's not going to zoom for me, so I'll try to I'll try to kind of follow along with my cursor so you can see. But let's see what questions we're going to be asked to answer. These are the 4 things we're going to need to know when we're done. So first it's going to say, what is Anne's point of view or her perspective about the state of the world? So I guess that kind of means like how does she feel about the world around her, about what's going on in the world, like what condition the world is in. Then it's going to say, how does this diary establish the setting of Anne's personal story? Explain what details convey the time, place, and historical events that are the backdrop of Anne's diary. So I guess we're looking for things she talks about in this diary entry that have to do with setting. Like, what does she say that reveals what time she's living in, what place she's in, and what historical events are happening around her? Then we're going to have to say, how does paragraph 4 almost contradict the main idea presented elsewhere in this entry? So we're going to kind of have to think, well, what's the main idea or the point she's getting across in the whole diary entry? And then how does paragraph 4 almost not even fit that? So we'll have to read closely there. And then it's going to say, how does the last paragraph further reiterate the point Anne made at the end of paragraph 3? Reiterate means like re-emphasize or like say again with more power. So something in the last paragraph must re-emphasize or repeat with more power a point that she's going to make in paragraph 3. So I guess some structural questions we have, but also we're looking for setting and what's her point of view on the world right now. Okay, so let's go back over here. It's not very long. It's just this page and that one, and that's it. Okay, which makes sense because you're writing in a diary, so you wouldn't write like 100 pages at a time. Okay, so it says Wednesday, January 13th, 1943. Dearest Kitty. Remember, that's the name for her diary, right? Dearest Kitty. This morning, I was constantly interrupted, and as a result, I haven't been able to finish a single thing I've begun. We have a new pastime, namely filling packages with powdered gravy. The gravy is one of Guise Company's products. Now, I see this little footnote here. It says the Guise Company, that's the name of Mr. Frank's company in Amsterdam. So Mr. Frank is her father. One of the reasons that the family went to Amsterdam, which is in Holland, to hide, the reason that they want to be there is they're trying to get away from the Nazis and get away from Germany. So they've gone to Holland, where Anne's father has a company. And so they're kind of helping with the company as they're trapped in the attic. So Anne is doing this job of filling gravy powder into packets for her father's company. Okay, so they're kind of working upstairs in the attic. Mr. Kugler hasn't been able to find anyone else to fill the packages. And besides, it's cheaper if we do the job. It's the kind of work they do in prisons. It's incredibly boring and makes us dizzy and giggly. Terrible things are happening outside. At any time of night and day, poor, helpless people are being dragged out of their homes. They're allowed to take only a knapsack and a little cash with them. And even then, they're robbed of these possessions on the way. Families are torn apart. Men, women, and children are separated. Children come home from school to find that their parents have disappeared. Women return from shopping to find their houses sealed, their families gone. The Christians in Holland are also living in fear because their sons are being sent to Germany. Everyone is scared. Every night, hundreds of planes pass over Holland on their way to German cities to sow their bombs on German soil. Every hour, hundreds or maybe even thousands of people are being killed in Russia and Africa. No one can keep out of the conflict. The entire world is at war. And even though the Allies are doing better, the end is nowhere in sight. I'm thinking back almost to this like question we had about like Anne's point of view about the state of the world. The world she's describing is pretty sad, right? I'm going back here. She says terrible things are happening outside, meaning like outside the attic in the little annex where they're staying. She says people are being dragged out of their homes, families are being torn apart and separated, children and mothers come home and the rest of their family is gone. She says even the Christians are living in fear. So remember, this is important because she's Jewish, right? That's one of the reasons that she has to go into hiding in Holland. But she says even the Christians in Holland who are not Jewish, even they are living in fear because their sons are being sent to Germany to fight against Hitler. So even they are being impacted, of course. Everyone's scared. She says, and here's the bomber planes flying to Germany every night, and she knows people are dying. And she says basically no one can keep out of the conflict because the entire world is at war. And that is a true statement, right? 1943, the Holocaust is not just happening like by itself, it's part of World War II. So the whole world is at war. And she mentions that the Allies are doing better, but the end is nowhere in sight. Now, the Allies, if you click that little footnote, that's the countries that were fighting against Hitler and Germany. Allies, we think of them as the good guys. That's United States, Great Britain, France, like the people trying to fight against Hitler and stop him. And Anne acknowledges that they're doing better, right? But the end is nowhere in sight. So it doesn't seem like anytime soon that Hitler is going to be defeated. Now, here's paragraph 4 right here. And I remember we had a question about it. It's going to say, how does this paragraph kind of contradict the main idea elsewhere? So let's see here. As for us, we're quite fortunate. Fortunate, that's a word that means like you're having good luck or good fortune or good blessings. It's kind of weird. I don't know how she could be fortunate in the attic right now. As for us, we're quite fortunate, luckier than millions of people. It's quiet and safe here, and we're using our money to buy food. We're so selfish that we talk about after the war and look forward to new clothes and shoes, when actually we should be saving every penny to help others when the war is over, to salvage whatever we can. This is kind of strange, isn't it? She says, we're really lucky and we are also selfish. Now, I would not think a girl trapped in an attic for 2 years could be selfish, right? Like, I would think of selfish as somebody who's like stealing money or something. But she says the reason that she thinks that they're selfish is because they talk about after the war. I think what she means is like so many people already have died and don't even get to think about what will happen after the war, right? But she feels like they're pretty safe. Like they're in this quiet annex. Sure, it's terrible to be like in prisoner there in the attic, but it's quiet, it's safe. They have money for food and they get to talk about the future. Like they get to have hope. Right. And that's something a lot of people don't have. And so she says, I know I should be thinking about giving my money to other people who need it, but we think about what we will do after the war. And I kind of feel like I kind of wish to say like, Anne, don't call yourself selfish. Like you're not selfish at all. But I see what she's saying, that they seem to be in a good spot compared to everything else going around them, right? With the families being ripped apart and everything that she described before. Then she goes back to describing everyone else's pain, right? So she says the children in this neighborhood run around in thin shirts and wooden shoes. They have no coats, no socks, no caps, and no one to help them. Gnawing on a carrot to still their hunger pangs, they walk from their cold houses through cold streets to an even colder classroom. Things have gotten so bad in Holland that hordes of children stop passersby in the streets to beg for a piece of bread. Gosh, right? I guess that is a contrast. She's quiet and safe and has food in her annex, the attic, but she sees and knows of the kids outside who are freezing, no coats, no socks, no food. They just have a carrot to chew on. They're begging for bread in the streets. Oh, gosh. And then she says, I could spend hours telling you, that means Kitty, the diary. I could spend hours telling you about the suffering the war has brought, but I'd only make myself more miserable. All we can do is wait as calmly as possible for it to end. Jews and Christians alike are waiting. The whole world is waiting, and many are waiting for death. Yours, Anne. Oh gosh, this last sentence is like really intense, right? She says everyone's waiting for the end of the war, yes, but many are also waiting for death. And I think about this because I'm not sure what she means exactly. I don't know if she means like people are just waiting, like they feel like any day they might be caught and might be sent to the prisons and might die, or if she means that some people are like hoping that death will come to just like rid them from this whole terrible world. Either way, it's a really somber mood there at the end. So if I go back to the questions here, we're going to reflect on this. So I think we've got lots to say about what's Anne's point of view about the state of the world. How's the world doing, right? We heard lots of things. I want you to use some textual evidence to tell me, how does she think the world's doing right now? And then for number 2, I want you to give me some details about setting. There are lots of setting details here, right? What time is it? Time meaning not like 2:30 in the afternoon, but like what time is it? Like look at the diary entry. It's got a date on it, right? We know what year it is, what month it is. We know where she is, right? And I want you to input some information there, not just that she's in the attic, but in what country is she, right? And what are the historical events happening around her? We've got clues about the bomber planes and the people being sent to fight. So, like, what are the events happening? Why is she trapped here? Then it's going to ask you how paragraph 4 contradicts the main idea that's presented elsewhere. That means what is different about this paragraph here? How did this paragraph sound different? Like, if you think about it, like she's describing misery in most of the diary entry, right? Misery, misery, misery. But there is something different here, right? Some different little main idea that I want you to tell me how that one was different. And then it says, how does the last paragraph reiterate or re-emphasize the point Anne made in paragraph 3? So you'll go back and how does this last paragraph, how does it re-emphasize or reiterate what she said up here at the end of paragraph 3? Okay, so read it, see how this part right here, see how it's similar to this section here, and then you'll write some notes about how does the end reiterate or re-emphasize what Anne was already saying. Okay, good luck, you guys. Make sure you're writing complete sentences and use your textual evidence to support your answers, okay? I look forward to seeing what you come up with.